do you like to be addressed as Elizabeth, Liz, or
Most people call me Liz, so Liz is
happy with Liz?
fine. Or Lizard.
Oh
I
my
get a feeling
god!
we're
I didn't tell Duncan that.
What was that?
When me and Liz were talking,
It's
we were sorting
autocorrect,
out
it's all
dates.
good. Chris really didn't
times.
call me Lizard.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh, great! I'm looking forward to it, Lizard." And I didn't realise until I went back to check yesterday. I said, "Oh, we're still good for tomorrow." And then I looked at the messages before, and then I saw it, and I went, "Oh my god! I called it Lizard."
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Grumpy Dads. Please, before we go, hit like, hit subscribe, get on with us because you'll get notifications of when we've got new stuff, and there's lots of awesome stuff coming up. With us, as always, is Chris.
Hello, mate. And this week we have got such an amazing guest. I'm so excited to do this episode. It's Elizabeth Wright.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi, everyone.
And
I'm good.
we have spoken beforehand. We will address you as Liz because you prefer it. So, yeah.
Yes, Liz, not Lizard.
Not Lizard?
Definitely not Lizard. Autocorrect is a pain in the ass, basically.
I'll get Duncan to show you the screenshot of the message that I sent Lizard here. As always, sorry.
I want to address this early on because, Liz, you and I may need to slow down our patter because obviously with Australian,
Yeah.
you know, we probably need to slow it down so that the English understand.
It's true.
Really?
Yeah, well, I'm going
Yeah.
lizard because lizards, they tend to be an Australian thing, so I thought it was an appropriate time to bring it up.
Ganging on the English already.
It's what Australians do.
Aussie.
The only thing we can be worse than is to be American. Australians and Canadians get on really well because we both hate America.
Let's alienate our American potential guests before we start. I mean, I think we've alienated quite a few people on this show, especially with the Halloween game show as well. So check that out. Just in case you want to get offended, check out the Halloween game show special. We offended half the planet with.
If there's anyone we haven't yet offended, please put it in the comments.
Have you offended New Zealanders yet?
No, we can't.
You can. It's really easy.
What's wrong with New Zealand? Is it kind of like a Welsh-English relationship with you?
There was a New Zealand farmer walking down the street in Sydney, and he's got a sheep slung over his shoulder. And this guy sees him and shouts out across the road, "Oi, sheep are for shearing, that's disgusting." And the New Zealand farmer looks over and goes, "No, wait, mate, I'm not shearing this sheep with anyone."
Oh, that's enough jokes about New Zealand because I like them.
Honestly, I love you, New Zealand. I do.
I do too. In fact, it's probably the most beautiful place in the world.
Yeah. To be fair, yeah.
As always, we start every podcast with icebreaker antics. What it is it's in the name, icebreaker antics. So what it involves is basically I go on the net and I look for products with 1-star reviews because they're the funniest.
Okay.
I read off the reviews and you've got to guess the product based on the reviews.
Ooh, okay.
If you guess it on the first review, you get 3 stars. On the second review, it's 2 stars. And on the last review, it's 1 star.
Okay. Oh, God.
1 guess per review.
Yes, thank you, Duncan. Yeah,
Oh,
I think
no.
that might have to be a daily show reminder because I never remember to tell the guests that. It's like rattling off guesses. Right, so first review.
Well, hang on. You've also got me to help you.
Oh, really? Have I got phone a friend? Or ask Duncan?
Yeah, I think we should call it that. Ask Duncan. Right, first review. Sharper than it needs to be. Push too hard and slip. It will take your finger right off.
That sounds really dangerous for me because I've only got 3 fingers. So, it's something that I wouldn't want to use. I have no idea. Can I ask Duncan? I pressed
Have a guess,
myself
Liz.
to ask Duncan.
No, you get to guess anyway. Have a guess, Liz.
I'm just complete
Don't worry
mind
about.
blank.
Let Liz have a think. Duncan, what's your guess?
Oh, there's so many options, aren't there? It could be particularly vicious skateboard or a...
I am using my poker face because I've realised that you look for when my eyebrow or something goes up when you're close.
I've actually got a guess, and I think it's the correct guess. I'm going with a cheese grater.
Oh my God.
Does that
It's
mean
wrong.
you got it?
It's wrong.
Oh,
It's wrong.
wrong.
Oh gosh, okay.
Double bluff. It was right. Well done. 3 stars. I just didn't want to say it straight away. But yeah, you got 3 stars. The 2 other reviews on that: ends up smelling after a couple of weeks, impossible to clean, and this will, without fail, destroy every sponge you use to clean. So, very dangerous cheese grater.
What
Very
kind of cheese grater is this?
I don't know. I don't know why it needs to be so sharp.
The kamikaze cheese grater.
Yeah,
Oh, jeez.
not one I'm tempted to buy.
I want to know what kind of cheese it's aimed at. Like, what kind of cheese is that hard to grate that it needs to be razor sharp so that it's going to actually viciously attack the user?
Well, you do use, I mean, I do. I grate like carrots and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but a normal cheese grater does carrots, does the job. Ours does anyway.
Are these
I don't
titanium
know.
carrots? Is it some kind of...
This isn't my cheese grater that I'm trying to sell here, so I'm not sticking up for it.
If you stick up for it, it's going to get cut off.
Yeah. Second product, first review. If the revolting fish smell doesn't kill you, getting them on will.
Used socks.
I'm going to say a good guess to be polite, because it sounded like a good guess, but then I don't think people are going to sell their use. No, they might, won't they? I'm going to go with good guess.
Underwear, because that's exactly that.
God. You always drag the standard of the podcast down with your guesses, Duncan. No, neither of those are correct.
That wasn't my guess. I was saying I was going to say that. Don't rob me of my guess again.
Okay.
I wouldn't have gone there with that one.
Take your guess.
Is it a wetsuit?
No, it's not. Another good guess. Really tight at the front, but loose at the back. Almost feels like it's bottle-shaped.
Ugg boots.
Ugg boots. It's a really good guess. But
I'm obsessed with
right.
feet at the moment, obviously. Can I have a second guess? Because my mind just went really dirty.
I'm going to leave it up to the adjudicator, because I'm not taking flack for it.
Go on, I want to hear it.
In fact, I will let you have a second guess. I will make a judge call if Duncan gives you that guess that he had.
Done.
Liz?
Okay. I was just thinking, because, sometimes it can end up a bit smelly, but I'm thinking like condoms.
Condoms. Really tight at the front, but loose at the back.
They could be really like problematic condoms.
It's bottle-shaped, okay? If the revolting fish smell doesn't kill
It's not
you,
really,
get them on
really
will.
faulty condoms.
I mean, that is a hell of a guess, but it's not correct, I'm afraid. That's really, really, I'm impressed with that. Cheap, hard plastic, uncomfortable, but kept feet dry for 5 minutes until my feet started to sweat. So probably not condoms now.
No, but I thought it'd be interesting use of condoms.
I bet they've been used for that. I bet there's a New Zealand farmer somewhere that's had that idea.
Stop with New Zealand.
Wellies.
Yes, wellies. We got 4 stars.
Or gumboots, as we call them in Australia.
That's right, gumboots. You don't know
Is that what you call it, is it?
Yeah. The amount of confused looks I got when I first moved over here, and I'd be like, yeah, I need to get my gumboots out, and people would look at me like, huh?
Did you ever get the thing you're asking for a doona?
Yes!
I need a doona.
And they just look at you like you're mad.
Confusion.
Yeah.
Because in Australia, a duvet is called a doona.
Yeah.
The big one that I really got stuck on for a long time was I kept going into the shops and looking for cordial. And you won't find it anywhere because
that's true. When I first started speaking in schools, I really had to stop myself from saying, well, I can't show you my prosthetic legs because I'll have to take my pants off.
Yes.
I had to learn how to stop saying that. I had to start saying trousers. I can't take my trousers off to show you.
In Australia,
I used to say pants
of someone, it has a different meaning. It's much
and I'd get odd looks from the teachers, a bit concerned, like, huh?
I was at a church once. This is a true story. There's a song called "As the Deer Pants for the Water, So My Soul Longs After You." It's based on one of the Psalms. And someone said, "What does it was?" And it was in the UK.
Yep.
And the minister at the front was going, "So what do you think that song really means?" You're trying to get people to think. And this guy goes, "Jesus wants your pants."
Right, first clue. The handle is really thin and became painful pulling after 10 minutes.
Ask Graham. Graham Duncan. Oh my God, where did Graham come from?
Yeah, where's Graham? I can't see him anywhere.
Graham, where are you? I don't want to ask you anymore, Duncan. I want to ask Graham.
Duncan, call a lizard.
Okay.
That, get one back. You got a lizard in the bank for that one.
A lizard in the bank. It's not a euphemism, by the way, folks. I'm going to go with a saw or a screwdriver, something like that. I'll stick with a saw for now.
Okay, no. Incorrect. Liz, what's your guess?
I'm trying to think. What's something that you pull on that suitcase?
These are cracking guesses, but no, it's incorrect. Really good guess, though. Second review. Sure, it's for one of those people who walk their mouse or gerbil.
A dog lead.
A dog lead. That's 2 stars. So we have got 6 stars overall. That's still really, really good.
I'm surprised you haven't taken a few stars off, Chris, because of how much we took the mick out of the
English. Not particularly proud. I think I was more offended that you took the mick out of New Zealand, even though I live here.
Australians' right to take the piss out of New Zealanders. And it goes the other way.
Does it? Do the Kiwis take the mick out of the Australians?
Oh, yeah.
There's a massive rivalry between Australia and New Zealand because they're the 2 closest nations.
Yeah.
What sort of stuff do they say?
New Zealand's amazing at rugby with the All Blacks.
Yeah.
So there's a real bitter sort of undercurrent of rivalry between them. Even better is the rivalry between New South Wales and Queensland, the 2 states.
Oh, yeah.
State of origin rugby every year. And you've never seen anything like it. Everyone's out for blood. It is the best rugby you'll ever watch is the state of origin every year.
And it's really problematic when you have cousins who live in Queensland and the rest of your family are in New South Wales. And
I had this weird thing with so many of my friends were from Queensland. And so suddenly it was like this bloodbath once a year, three games a year. And it was just like, they all suddenly hated New South Wales. It's like, why the freaking heck are you living here? Move back, you.
I know.
As always, when I do my research on the guests, my questions always go by what's the most exciting. And Liz at the Paralympics, Sydney 2000, silver medal, 400-meter freestyle.
And the silver medal goes to Elizabeth Wright of Australia. She's taken 1.6 seconds off the world record and is totally delighted. And Elizabeth Wright of Australia hugs the gold medalist, Elizabeth, having picked up the silver medal, and she is pretty happy with herself as well.
Elizabeth Wright.
How did that feel?
It felt amazing, but I'll tell you what, it was the biggest shock of my life because I actually went into that race ranked 15th in the world.
Oh, wow.
So on paper, I shouldn't even have been in the final, but lucky for me, that morning they cancelled the heats and they took us straight to final. So I didn't even have to attempt to try and get into the final.
Oh, wow.
Like I was automatically in that final. My home coach had been telling me for months that I think you can win a medal in the 400 free. And I used to just laugh at him. I thought he was absolutely mad because I'm like, I'm 15th in the world. There is absolutely no way that I could win a medal in this race. But it was one of my favourite races. I think I've always suited middle distance better than sprints. Unfortunately for my classification at the Paralympics S6, they only went up to the longest race was the 400. I think I would have really suited the 800 even more. But yeah, it only went up to the 400, but I absolutely loved that race. So when I went out for that final and I mean, you don't see this on the video of it on YouTube, but I did actually false start that race as well.
Oh,
Did you?
Yeah, that final. But lucky for me, at the Paralympics, we get one chance. So at the Olympics, if you false start, that's it. You're out completely. But at the Paralympics, I think they recognize that a lot of us are a bit wobbly on our feet. So it's like, we might accidentally false start. We're not kind of doing it on purpose at all. So I actually false started the race. And I mean, I could jokingly say that I did it to put all the other competitors off or whatever.
Playing mind
I
games.
assure you I didn't. That wasn't my intention. But I false started, got out and back up on the blocks. And my coach had given me my race plan. I knew if I stuck with it, I had to trust him because he knew. I think a lot of the time, what a lot of people don't realize is that our coaches know us even better than we know ourselves because they see us swim every single day for years. And they're constantly correcting our technique and guiding us on this journey and pulling the best out of us. And so my coach had given me this race plan and I thought, you know what, I'm going to stick with it, of course. So, do what my coach says. And I did. And it's one of the hardest things, but I think, obviously with a middle distance race, it's the way you play the game. My coach said, don't go all out for the first 200 because, he'd been watching all the other swimmers and he was like, that's what they're going to do. Just hold back, sit at their feet. You just conserve your energy for the second half of the race. So I did that. And it's really hard when you're sitting at people's feet. They're like a body length or a body length and a half ahead of you. And you're like, I really want to just catch up and go out with them. But it was just like, just trust Ross, trust my coach. So the first half, I just did that. And then, kind of at the halfway point, I was like, right, now it's time to turn that motor on and really just give it everything that I've got for these last 4 laps, which I did. And each lap, it just felt like I was just overtaking more and more and more of the swimmers. And the only one I couldn't see, that I had no idea where she was Steph, the American who ended up winning the race. I knew she was in the lane next to me, but I had no idea where she was. But I knew where my teammate Carney was because she was in the other lane next to me. And I knew when I overtook her. And to me, that was exciting because Carney had always beaten me in the 50 and the 100-meter freestyle. So suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm ahead of Carney. Like, what? This is amazing. And I just kept it going. And I remember finishing the race and touching the wall and looking to the left and not seeing anyone else there and turning to look to the right. And my heart at this point was like, oh my God, I've beaten people. And turned to the right and there was Stephanie and she was like, I could just see this grin on her face. And I remember whipping around to look at the screen and seeing number 2 next to my name and just being in like shock of like, what the hell just happened? And then just literally flinging myself with whatever energy I had left at Steph.
I saw that.
Just
lovely.
because the amazing thing is like Steph was ranked about, I think, 16th or 17th in the world. So we were 2 complete outsiders who came in and beat the world record holder, although Steph broke the world record in that race. So we'd beaten the former world record holder and the top 5 in the world to walk away with the gold and silver. So
you've got to love that sort of, you're 15th in the world, so you don't stand a chance. I'm like, if I was 15th in the world in anything, I'd have it on T-shirts.
Yeah. I know. But you know what? Honestly, Duncan, I think it's different when you've been. So I'd been a swimmer by that point for 7 years. So for me, it's like now I think like I'm the same. I'm like, oh my God, if I reached 15th in the world in anything else in my life, that would be flipping amazing, right? But I think at that point it was literally like, I've been at this for 7 years full time, and you want to be the best that you can be. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, you're going to be first in the world or you're going to win all the gold medals or anything like that. But I think what swimming taught me so much was about you can only work on yourself and you can only control your own actions and your own behaviors and your own attitudes. You can't control anyone else's. So if you can get to the end of any day and think, I've actually been the best version of myself that I possibly could be today, then that deserves a pat on the back. Absolutely.
What Australia does so well is you were like a goddess once that had happened, because Australia just goes off when someone wins a medal.
Oh, they do. They do. They just, you know, it can be gold, silver, or bronze. They're like,
one of the best things about Australia was I think it was the 2004 Olympics.
Yeah.
I think it was 2004. It was called the Miracle on Ice.
Oh, yes, Steve Bradbury.
Yeah, and this guy,
that was brilliant.
Skating, and he was coming dead last because Australians and ice, obviously not a great mix.
It doesn't work.
Everyone fell over in the last lap, and he went by them all on one, and he was like a god.
He was like,
yeah.
Go watch it. He's on YouTube, people. So honestly, go look up Steve Bradbury.
If you can do it, get it with Roy and HG doing the talking. You won't know who they are in the UK. They're two Australian comedians who do sports commentary. And it's brilliant. Just do it with Roy and HG and look at the Miracle on Ice. Gold. No pun intended.
Absolutely.
And when it was all done and dusted, the race, you've got your medals.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it was in some sort of arena or...
Yeah. So we had the exact same facilities as the Olympians had. So we're in the aquatic center, and that's where they do the medal presentations as well and stuff like that. So yeah.
They tend to be in a pool, Chris, not in an arena. They don't tend to swim.
Yeah.
No, I mean the pool in an arena, not... Right, I'm going to carry on with my question. What was the first thing you did after it was all done and dusted?
So basically, once you get your medal, then you have to like walk around the pool, around the side where the stands are, and of course, you know, my family were there, my parents were there, my brother and sister and nieces and nephews and all that were there, and I just couldn't stop grinning and was waving at them, and then you kind of have to run the gauntlet of media and stuff like that. So, you know, once you kind of through that and out the other end, it's all a bit like, oh, it's over. Like, I'm still smiling, but it's a bit like, you know, because the people are just getting on with it. There were other races being raced, so swimmers concentrating on what they had to do and stuff like that. And but I think by that point we were kind of towards the end of the evening, so I think there were only a couple of more races to go. So I actually went upstairs and walked across the boardwalk to like the gates to go where the like all the fans and the audience and all that are, and you know, love mum and dad, they were like, yeah, okay, our daughter's won a medal now, we don't care about the rest of the races. They basically left and were waiting for me at the end.
Kind of cruel the way they always interview immediately after the race.
Yeah, they do. And
on adrenaline, you're exhausted, and they're trying to...
you're huffing. You're like this. You're like, like you're like that. And they're asking you questions, and you're like, just 1 minute. I just need to get my breath back. It's like, because you literally, you get out, and they direct the medal winners down one corridor, and then all the other swimmers down the other way, because it's like, the media's not interested in you. Like, they just want to talk to those, and of course, when you win a medal, you also automatically get selected for drug testing as well. So you end up with like the person following you around with a clipboard, and they will literally, because you don't have to go immediately to the rooms where you're being drug tested, but as soon as you exit that pool, you have someone sticking to you like glue, and they're basically waiting for you to go, I need to pee now, so can we like go? And I remember one time being drug tested, and it wasn't this competition, it was another one, I think a few years beforehand, and I don't know what was wrong with my bladder, but I was drinking loads and I was just not needing to pee, and I had to sit there for about 2 hours just chugging stuff, because and obviously you can't drink too much because you're going to dilute you sample too much, but you're still trying to drink because you're like, well, I need to give a sample. And then eventually it happens and you go do the sample, and again, it's such a weird thing. I don't think people realize or really fully understand about what drug testing involves, because I remember the first time I had to do it, and it was just so weird because you've got someone literally standing there watching you pee in a cup. Basically, like, they have to watch you do it, and you have to shove your sleeves up above your elbows, you have to put your shirt up to chest height, and this is probably all too much information, but I don't care. You pull pull your trousers and pants down to your knees. And it's basically because people have been known to tie like fake bladders to like their thighs or their backs and
Running down
stuff.
the arm, which is why the sleeves
Yeah.
are there and,
So they have to be able to see pretty much, like you've got to have absolutely no shame or no embarrassment whatsoever, because this individual's going to pretty much see you naked, basically, and watch your pee in a cup.
This happened more than once because I'm worried that somebody might have made it up and just got you to lift your shirt up and wee in front of them. But
the trench coat, I'm the drug test now.
It's like, it's all a bit
walking
dodgy,
in with a clipboard and getting a lady to pee in front of them.
I just need some.
You do get, the guys get a guy to watch them, the women get a woman to watch them. So it's not. Still could be slightly dodgy, but not that dodgy.
Do you miss swimming competitively?
I do. It's a weird thing even now. Like, so I turned 41 a couple of weeks ago. So honestly, like, there's no way I'm getting back to a Paralympic fitness anytime soon.
If you jumped in a pool right now, how close do you reckon you could get to the time you got in 2000?
Yeah. Very far off it. So whenever I go back to Australia, I often go, my dad's partner, she loves swimming, and she actually goes swimming at the pool I used to train in. And quite often Leslie will say, oh, she'll ring up and say, I'm going out of the pool, do you want to come? And so I'll go down with her, just because I swim probably more so when I go back to Australia, because I'm like, I'm really sorry, Britain, but your pools are shit, basically. It's like, I'm really sorry, but your pools are shit. So I prefer like swimming when I'm back in Australia. When I have gone swimming with my dad's partner, and I'll get in there, do a little bit of a warm up, and I'm absolutely exhausted. And then I think like, I'll just time myself, see how I go. I'm like it's tragic. I won't even mention how far over my old times that I kind of am. It's really, really bad. So there's no way in hell I'll ever get back to that fitness. But guaranteed, every time there's a Paralympics on, so every 4 years, I get really nostalgic. I kind of think like, oh man, why didn't I go on for another 4 or 8 years? Because really I could have. I retired after the Sydney Games at 21. So I honestly could have easily have gone on probably for another 4 or even 8 years. And I do get that nostalgia, and I do really miss it. I miss the vibe, I miss the atmosphere. But I think really more so what I miss the most are my teammates. I miss that time with them, because you do literally become a family. I mean, we used to travel around the world every single year. We'd come to the British Nationals. I've swum multiple times at Ponds Forge at Sheffield at British Nationals. We used to go to Europe. We used to go, speaking of New Zealand, went to World Championships in Christchurch in 98. You build those bonds with these people over all this time, and I genuinely miss them, and I stay in touch with quite a lot of them. And I'm even the godmother of one of my best friends, Janelle, I met on the Paralympic swim team, and I'm the godmother to 2 of her children and stuff like that. So you build these really strong bonds with these teammates. And
I like those that you've taken this to another level with. You've obviously retired from swimming, but you've taken on that thing. I was watching your TED talk on Emily.
And this is what Emily's mother said. She said, Emily had been born with half of her left hand and forearm missing. She said Emily didn't believe in herself. She said Emily didn't think she would ever achieve anything in her life. But after hearing your talk, suddenly she sees a future for herself.
And you've helped other people to reach the same goals that you have. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, well, actually, funnily enough, this year I got to catch up with Emily before lockdown. Don't worry, I haven't gone around to just like going to people's households and gone, hi. I actually got to meet up with Emily because I went and spoke at her old school again. And she's now 16. And she doesn't want to become a Paralympic swimmer. So for context, for the audience members who haven't gone to watch my TEDx talk yet, although do go watch it, got to plug myself there. The second time that I went and spoke at Emily's school, she actually drew a picture of her competing at the Paralympics in the swimming pool and had me in the stands cheering her on. Well, she isn't pursuing that dream, but she does want to be a fashion designer, and she's working towards that. And I think that's brilliant. And I think that that's what's so missing from education, or even in all sectors of society for disabled children, is this recognition of their potential to achieve in life. And I think a lot of this comes down to multiple things. I think, in the case with Emily, a lot of it was her teachers were wrapping her in cotton wool. They didn't want her to potentially hurt herself or feel that she couldn't achieve anything. But in holding her back, they were actually inadvertently, I think, telling her that she couldn't achieve anything. Right through to lack of representation of successful disabled people in life that, can show disabled kids that they can go out there and achieve amazing things. And I think that was the thing with Emily. When I first spoke at her school and she was in tears and she couldn't even tell me what was wrong, but it was her mother who told me that, for the first time, hearing me talk about my Paralympic journey, it showed her that someone who looked like her could achieve something. And there's so much power in that. And I think it's something that not just me, because obviously there's millions of disabled people out there who are achieving amazing things. And I think we have to promote what they're doing. We have to talk about them. We have to represent them.
I read your e-book last night and was looking through it. But you talk about it seems to be, and obviously that book, you've got quite a number of people which sort of talk about their experiences.
Yeah.
One of the things that really did strike me, and it's something that probably I hadn't paid enough attention to myself, is that nature of ableism and the fact that the biggest hurdle seems to be not the disability, not the restrictions of physical or mental capacity or anything like that. It's other people and their attitude. I mean, what you do is amazing. I love the way you go into the schools and you're talking, because Chris and I both said that this is something that needs to get into schools more.
The amount of times in my life that I've had people, and I'm not embarrassed to say even children who have said this to me, who've told me, I pity you, I feel sorry for you, or people who've leapt in and taken over things that I'm perfectly capable of doing on that assumption that, oh, well, if I was missing half an arm and some fingers or had a prosthetic leg, I don't think I'd be able to do it. So I don't think she can do it. So I'm going to do it for her, or not ask her, or not include her. And I think that's the biggest problem, is so much of these assumptions, these tropes, these narratives out there about disability that are really not authentic at all and not true to the actual lived experience. And the reason I did that ebook was because I'm still learning as well. So I can talk about my experience of ableism from my perspective, and I've definitely experienced a lot of ableism in my life. But as you rightly pointed out, there's people who have intellectual disabilities or who are neurodivergent or, have chronic illness and stuff like that. And we're all experiencing ableism from our own varied perspectives. And the reason I did that ebook was to educate other people, but also to educate myself to a certain degree, because I can't understand what it's like to, say, for example, have a chronic illness. One of my best friends has rheumatoid arthritis, and there are some days where she's more disabled than me because she literally can't get out of bed. Now, that's not an issue for me. I get out of bed, put my prosthetic leg on, and I'm off for the day kind of thing. Whereas she can be in so much agony and have so much stiffness in her joints that she doesn't even have that option to do that. So I think it's building that understanding of exactly what disability is. I think a lot of people, it always amuses me when a lot of people, I think, assume that disability is people in wheelchairs. But the wheelchair users in the disability community only make up approximately 1% of the disability community. Yet, when you talk to people about disability, that is the first image that comes into their head. And I don't want to take away from wheelchair users. Of course, they need representation. They need to have their issues discussed. They need to get their voices heard. But I think what needs to happen is that broader education about exactly what disability is and how it affects different people in different ways, and how ableism affects different people in different ways.
We had Kira on a couple of weeks ago, who is obviously, it's all about the learning disabilities. And I mean, from my experience, because obviously my daughter's autistic and PDA, and Chris, his son, is autistic. We see that as well. The idea of it being a hidden disability that people don't realise until sort of time goes on. But I found myself, a result of reading your book, was just going back on my own thoughts and, do I do this? And you realise that you must do it in so many different ways. But I think it's remarkable the way you're getting out there and you're actually educating people. I think it is magic. I really do.
Thank you. I really hope that, it's working. What I'm doing is working. It's not even about me being the central point or the center of attention. It's why I started Conscious Being, because I wanted to promote disabled women's voices. I think, again, it's about ensuring that people are hearing a wide variety of voices and experiences, not just mine, because again, my experience is just very, very unique to me. From what I can gather, a lot of people are saying, they're discovering stuff that they would never even have thought about, a bit kind of like what you were saying, Duncan, about reading the ebook and perhaps realizing a lot of things and coming back on that thinking. And it's interesting because a couple of months ago, I'm sure you guys are very aware of all of what happened when the Witches movie came out.
Yes.
And the big outcry from the limb different community. And I got involved in that and the whole hashtag Not a Witch campaign and stuff like that. And quite a few of my close friends, when I pointed it out to them, the image of Anne Hathaway with her upper, like the way that the art team made her have upper limb difference in her hands, they actually were honest with me and they said, you know what, thank you for pointing this out, Liz, because honestly, we wouldn't even have thought that would be an issue. But when I saw there's a little girl who I've kind of mentored and spoken to and built a relationship with, her family, who she has limb difference, upper limb difference. When I saw the video of her in tears over this image of someone who looks like her being portrayed as this evil witch, I thought enough is enough. As an adult, you can kind of manage it and deal with it, even though you shouldn't have to. But to see children really visibly upset about this portrayal in a children's movie, which can you imagine then as a child going into school and perhaps having friends calling you a witch? I mean, when I was at school, I had friends call me E.T. and a pirate and stuff like this. And I think it's this whole thing of not having control over how you're represented to people. Now, I was, as a kid, I was quite a girly girl, and I would have given anything to have been seen as like, the princess or the heroine. I'm gonna totally go in with those tropes. That was what I wanted to be seen as a child, but I wasn't. I was seen as E.T. or a pirate, and I really didn't want that. And I couldn't understand why couldn't I dress up as the princess for the party or whatever. It's this really hard thing of being represented in movies and TV shows and books and stuff where you feel like you have no say over that and lack that autonomy. And this is why I think, the whole hashtag Not a Witch and that went so viral and really, kind of pushed issues. But then even in light of autism, I'm sure you guys are very aware of Sia's movie coming out and the trailer.
I'd like to say, yeah.
The very cringy representation of autism in that trailer. It was towards the end of last year, I think. I became aware of a show on Netflix, and honestly, I'm not saying Netflix are perfect, but I think Netflix are nailing it on representation right now in a lot of their shows. But towards the end of last year, someone told me I should watch Llama Llama. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it. In series 2, they introduce a character called Audrey Antelope, and Audrey has limb difference, and she looks almost exactly like me, which I almost cried when I watched it, because it was like the little girl inside of me that had no representation whatsoever was suddenly seeing a really positive representation of her on the screen. And Audrey rides bikes, she loves sports, she goes on a scooter. The way they even dealt with the main characters meeting Audrey, of course they did the slightly awkward introduction where, the Llama, the main character, noticed that Audrey was missing limbs and kind of went, oh, what happened to you? But the way Audrey answered the question was absolutely brilliant. And once Lama knew, it was like, oh, okay, cool, let's go play. And that's how most kids are around disability. They're curious, but once that curiosity has been satisfied, they're like, okay, cool, that's fine, we'll just get on with it. Yeah. And I think that's magical representation of how disability should be represented. And then the other week I started watching The Healing Powers of Dude on Netflix, and it's another one I recommend people to watch. It's a bit cringy with the acting because they're young kids and it's live action, not animation like Llama Llama. So it can be a little bit cringy, sometimes it can be when kids are acting. But they have the main character is a boy with anxiety, and he gets a dog that I can't remember what are they called again? The dogs that help people with anxiety. Yeah, that's it. Who's called Dude. The dog's called Dude. And he's going, after being homeschooled for 2 years, he's then going back to mainstream school, and he's got this dog to help him cope when he's feeling extreme anxiety. But the way that they portray him experiencing the anxiety is, I think, brilliantly and creatively done and quite authentic to the experience. But they also have one of the other main characters is a young girl who I think she has a form of muscular dystrophy, and she's in an electric wheelchair, and she's the coolest kid on the block. She's really smart. She's very quick-witted. One of the other main characters develops this huge crush on her and wants to ask her out and all this stuff because they're like in middle school, and so all the hormones are starting to buzz and all this stuff. And it's like, that she's in a wheelchair and she has a disability, but it's not all of her.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that she's this fully rounded individual and person, which is what all disabled people are, where we are fully rounded, interesting individuals. We're not just our impairments and conditions. Yes, they're an integral part of us. We can't take them off like we do clothing at the end of the day, but they're not all of us, and they don't dictate all of who we are. And I think that's what The Healing Powers of Dude have done so brilliantly. You've kind of gone from like The Witches and Sia's film music through to there are people out there who are doing absolutely stunningly amazing representation.
Have you seen Pablo as well?
No, I haven't, but I want to see it. Yeah.
That's another one that they don't overtly say. He's clearly autistic, but it's never overtly said.
Yeah.
The way it's represented is just so cleverly done. Is that he sort of escapes into his own little world. And that's how he works through things, and then the resolves itself. But I think it's magic the way they've done that.
And it shows that it can be done. You don't have to resort.
Was funnily enough was Predators. I think it's Predators. But there's the guy's son in that was autistic.
Yeah.
And he's getting picked on at school and stuff. But the Predators see him as the warrior because he's actually what they consider to be the next stage of evolution.
Yeah.
That's magic. Again, in a weird way, but it was a really cool, positive representation of neurodiversity
and exactly, all of these show that it's possible, that it can be done, and that you don't have to resort to these decade-old tropes or even century-old tropes of what disability is. We don't have to go there anymore. It's like
it's taught, isn't it? That's what it is. We don't get born to hate or discriminate. It's taught, and that's why. I mean, we've mentioned it so many times why it should be a subject at school. And we've said before how much kids actually take away after school, how much they actually use. This would be useful and would, fingers crossed, end discrimination and those truths come into surface. I don't see why it can't be done.
And you know what? I'm currently working with a client. It's a big trust down in London who are actually doing, I think they're looking at approximately 5 years of work where they're tackling race sexuality and gender, women, and disability. And I'm so glad, because quite often in diversity and inclusion work, disability can be forgotten or left off for whatever reason, but they've made disability one of the pillars, and they're really actively looking at dismantling the discriminatory structures that they have within their organisation and across their schools, so that they can make the whole trust more inclusive and diverse. And I think there's so much power in what they're doing, and I feel so lucky and so grateful that I get to be a part of supporting them on this journey, especially around disability. And I really hope they become a leading light for other schools and trusts across the UK to show that it can be done, that it's not a, you know, this big scary project, but it's something that you can work on steadily over a number of years, because obviously there are no quick fixes. You know, unconscious bias is ingrained, structures are ingrained, and we need to kind of chip away progressively at all of these. And this is their aim, is to not create sudden change that will almost like shock people, but just to, let's start having these discussions. Let's start changing these structures and the way that we do things and the processes and policies that we have, so that we can make our trust, our schools, more inclusive for both teachers and students, you know. And I think that's magic. And I really hope that they really, really influence, or really start to influence in the next year or two, the number of other trusts and schools that are doing this work.
I think it needs to. It really does. I hear some stories nowadays, and it's just heartbreaking that, especially when it's kids, that you hear these sort of things that they go through. And I think it's one of the things that hits me hard, is that I can't help putting the thought into my head, what if that was my child, that I'd had to put my arms around him and tell him everything was okay, and that these things aren't a daily occurrence, or it always happens, that I always put my son in place of what's happened to another child. And it's really upsetting.
It is. And it's, you know, there's three children or young teens that I really keep in mind when I'm feeling tired and fed up and angry, and I've just had enough and I want to stop doing this work. It's Tommy from, Tommy is the inspiration for his parents starting the Limbo Foundation. If you've ever seen them on Twitter, they use 3D printers to create prosthetic arms for children, and they make them like, they've got superhero arms, unicorn arms, all these amazing arms. I'm like, I want one, literally. I'm like, please give me one. But I've met Tommy, and he calls me his friend, and he's missing half his right arm, I think. And every time I go to visit him, obviously I haven't really been able to see him this year because of the pandemic, but you know, whenever I have gone to see him, he always wants to high five our little arms. So we've got our arms up and we're going like, high five. It's so cute, you know. So like Tommy, Emily, who we've spoken about before, I keep Emily in mind. And there's also a young disability activist on Twitter called Aya, and I've actually interviewed her on the Conscious Being podcast that I do. She was the first interview that I did, and she's 16 and she's so engaged politically and around activism, and she gets tired, she gets frustrated, she gets exhausted. And I just, whenever I get to that point where I'm almost to the point of, you know what, I'll just go get an office job and I just give up on this stuff because honestly it's too hard, I think of those three in particular for me. And they keep me going, because I'm like, I don't want them to get to my age and still be having to deal with all this same stuff, all the same discrimination, all this same rubbish that we're all going through. It's like, I'm like, no, if there's anything I can, you know, hopefully I've still got another 40 years in me, fingers crossed. But, you know, I want to get to the end of those 40 years and think and actually see change happening. I want to be seeing it happening. I think you've got to keep the kids in your head when you're doing this work, that it's for you, but it's for them as well.
Yeah, we all want. We've discussed it at length before, and we're always fighting for a better tomorrow for our kids. Yeah. I think my drive is just it's literally, I don't mind admitting, it's fear. Fear is my drive, that he will get to an age where I'm not around anymore and he's got to survive on his own. So I don't know how it is for other people, but for me, I'm fighting as hard as I possibly can now to make the world easier for him when I'm not here. So
for me, it's about, it comes back to that, how do we make tomorrow better than today? Because I just want my daughter to be happy, whatever the situation is. And it's not happy when you are singled out for being different. I'm glad she's in the school she's in, where all the kids there have some form of challenging behaviours or learning disability. But I see it, and she identifies herself. She'll say, I hate autism because of the way it makes her feel. And I want her to see the amazing side of her as well, because she is amazing. And that's what's driving me, I think.
And I think that's the thing, like you may have read in the ebook, I don't know whether you came across Yolanda in there, who she's a teacher in a secondary school.
And what happened to her at the school was, I was gobsmacked.
Yeah. I think the way that she's turned that into a positive in the work she does, in that she openly tells the students she works with, that she's dyslexic and that she might make mistakes, but that's okay.
She was told in the school by the teacher in front of all the kids, how can a dyslexic person become a teacher?
Yeah.
In disbelief.
It's crazy. But then the powerful thing is that because she does tell her students that she's dyslexic, what lifts me is knowing that she probably has some dyslexic kids in her class, and they're seeing that actually, if I want to become a teacher, I can become a teacher because there's the proof. If I want to become something, I can become something because there is proof that it can happen.
The thing I really liked about her that actually stood out for me more was, and this is where it comes back to, is this just, sometimes these things, the next stage of evolution, or are they just, in some ways they can be, because she talks about the fact that she deals with science and chemistry and stuff like that. And she can spell words that most people can't, because she's learned to view the words in a different way. So she looks for the pattern of the word rather than the actual individual spelling. And that helps her students to learn how to spell these words properly.
Yeah.
So she's actually, and I think that's magic. She's using her disability to actually
it's an actual ability. It's something that is useful and unique to her. And I think that's the thing. I've done a lot of work in the past few years where I'm actively proud of my limb difference. I'm proud of the opportunities it's given me. I'm proud of just everything that it's enabled me to do and experience. And I really want kids like your daughter, Duncan, to get to a point where they feel a sense of pride about who they are and what makes them different. But, I think so much of this is so applicable, I think, to every other kind of protected characteristic group, whether it's around race or sexuality or age and stuff like that. It's about being proud of who you are and not being dragged down because of who you are. And I think there's a lot of cultural change that needs to happen. There's a lot of education that needs to happen, just to make this world a more supportive and given place. And when I talk about disability and ableism and stuff like that, I do it in the sense of, I hope I never shame people, because I do challenge a lot, and I would never want to shame anyone, because I know certainly, I'm white. And of course, I have unconscious bias in me around race and ethnicity, and I'm very aware of that. And I've worked so hard on myself around that. I'm actively anti-racist, and I will call people out on racism and stuff like that. And I'll call myself out, because I still occasionally say things or think things that I'm like, whoa, why did I say that? Or why did I do that? And shame, when I've been shamed by people around that, I know it doesn't work. It makes me feel absolutely rubbish and defensive. So I try not to shame people around ableism, but at the same time, I can't let that stop. And I don't think it should stop any of us from challenging the ableism that we see.
I think it comes down to, there's a difference, isn't there? It's about celebrating diversity rather than condemning difference.
Yeah. And honestly, when I look at my friendship group, I'm really proud of my friendship group as well. I have friends who are Middle Eastern, who are of African descent, who are Eastern European, who have invisible disabilities, visible disabilities, who are transgender, who are gay, who are, you know, my friendship group and even in my family are so diverse, but it's enriched my life. And I actually feel really sad that there are people who are kind of so close-minded about difference. And I just think, you're missing out. You're missing out on so much. You're missing out on getting to know so many amazing people with so many amazing life experiences and stories and things that they can share with you. I mean, my housemate is British Indian, and in the past few years, I've learned so much about Diwali, and I've learned to love actual proper, like, delicious Indian food that's not like from a bottle or a restaurant where it's been a bit adapted for English taste. It's like, you know, these are all experiences which I would have never have had if I didn't have this, you know, amazing housemate who's become one of my best friends and who I love dearly. I see her as a sister, and, you know, I just wish people, you know, in wider society would just be more open to celebrating and experiencing and engaging with difference on so many levels.
Thanks everyone so much for joining us. It's been a fantastic episode. Thank you so much to Chris as always.
Thank you, mate.
And thank you to Liz. It's been amazing hearing your story and everything you're doing. Just so everyone knows, I'll be putting links up for Liz's website, for her ebook, and for, you know, the YouTube links for her winning silver and all that kind of stuff. Will all be in the description, so please do click on and have a look. And thank you, Liz. It's been amazing.
Thank you both so much for having me. Thank you, Chris. And I feel like, you know, pinging back to the start, I want to say thank you, Graham. Or is that Duncan? No. But no, thank you. Thank you. Thank you both for having me.